All right. Good day. 19th Sivan. Ayom Yom. An insight into the scholastic relationship between the Rebbe Maharaj and the Tzemach Tzedek, his father, which is the Rebbe Maharaj. In the month of Mar Cheshvan, in 1852, the Tzemach Tzedek started an additional program of study with my grandfather, the Frierdiker Rebbe's grandfather. The father of the Frierdiker Rebbe was the Rebbe Rashab, the father, and then the previous generation is the Rebbe Maharaj, Rebbe Shmuel, who was the last son, I believe, of the Tzemach Tzedek. So the Rebbe Maharaj started a program of study with my grandfather. The Tzemach Tzedek started a study with the Rebbe Maharaj. Besides the Tzemach Tzedek's regular studies, there were additionals. This additional study was for 2.5 hours daily, starting at 10 p.m. in the winters and 4 a.m. in the summers. For 2 years, they studied Kabbalah with Hasidic interpretation. And thereafter, until Elul, when the special program ceased, they studied the following philosophical works. These are works of what they call in Hebrew Chakira, Jewish philosophy. Those of Rav Sadia Goin. Sadia Goin lived both in Egypt and in Iraq in the 900s of the Common Era. Mor Nevuchim, of course, is from the Rambam. And I mean, I'm very brief, I myself have not delved at length into any of these books, except the Kuzari. I read the Kuzari, will come up in English quite a while ago. But Mor Nevuchim by the Rambam. The Rambam, that was an attempt, I shouldn't say an attempt, that was the Rambam's work of reconciliation of Aristotelian philosophy with Torah. In other words, it was targeted for those the intellectuals of the time, right? In our generation, it would be, let's see, the rationalists of the time, or whatever philosophy was current. It was targeted toward them to show the roots of those philosophies and the commonality of those philosophies with Yiddishkeit. The Sefer Ikarim, I don't know at all. That was in the 1400s. And the Kuzari is an interesting book. It was written by poet Yehuda Halevi in the 1100s, which explores a kingdom of nations called the Kuzari, who wanted to convert to Judaism. And in that book, he discusses at length the three monotheists, the prominent religions of the time, and compares Judaism, Mohammedanism, and Christianity in a kind of a dialogue. He has a dialogue with a priest, he has a dialogue with an uman, and then with a rabbi. Interesting book. Recommended. Okay. That's Hayom Yom. Today's Tanya begins a new chapter what? Chapter 7, yes, in Shal Yichud B'Emunah, on page 908 in this book. And did I say chapter 8? No, chapter 7, yeah, page 908. And its Perek Zayin is on page 162 in Likutei Moharan. Ubezeh Yuven. It's interesting how this continuity of chapters, he always starts with this we'll understand, or according to what we've said, or hine, behold. So he always is linking, like a good writer, the following chapter with the preceding chapter. So what was the bezeh? The bezeh. This will be understood. I think the singular point of yesterday and inching toward it the day before is that Hashem's midos are not like our midos. Our midos, we can overlay, interoperate Chesed and Gevurah, and I'm using that as an example because that's the example he uses, kindness and stringency, or expressiveness and holding back. We can interoperate those two, but in Hashem's reality, those two things are one. There's not an interoperability. There's what the Kabbalah and Chassidus and Tanya call hiskalolus, which is inter-inclusion. These things are a meld, and they are a singularity. And we gave the example, and we didn't give the example. Actually, I'll give the example. And one of the metaphors for this that we have in this world. So this singularity is the purpose, the usefulness of this singularity is expressed in the creation of worlds, where worlds, at the same time that worlds conceal godliness, otherwise it would burn up, dissolve, they also reveal godliness at one and the same time. So that the world isn't something that's not alive, a piece of dead wood, even though dead wood has something in common with a tree. It falls off, however, and it becomes separate. It falls to the ground, or it rots. But the world doesn't rot. The world doesn't rot because it's infused with, at the same time that it's a separate thing, it's infused with the unity of God, one and the same time. So that the attribute of Gevurah is really an attribute of allowing revelation of godliness in a way that we can take it. And one of the metaphors that's used is rain. Rain. Without rain, of course, nothing can live. The soil needs to be tantalized, excited by and enriched by the rain in order to bring forth vegetation. Now, what is rain? Rain is water. And I'm not telling you anything you don't know, but water, uninhibited, just flows. Rain is formed into very tight little drops. In fact, if it weren't little drops, there would be a flood. And it's only because the rain comes into little drops that the earth can take it. So that's a metaphor for Hashem himself. Hashem is an allness. And if the allness were all, there would be nothing. Nothing could exist. It's only because of the Tzimtzum, the Shem Elokim, Havaya Hu Elokim. It's only because of the Tzimtzum of Elokim that Havaya can express itself. So, with all that, let's start the chapter. We can understand that which is written, or Masha Omer, what's written or said in the Zohar, Zohar Kodesh, in the Holy Zohar. The Holy Zohar tells us that the pasuk Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, the one which expresses the oneness of God, is called Yehuda Ilah, is called the supernal unity. We'll leave this for now. Ubarak Shem Kaved Malchuso La'olam Vo'ed, which we say right after that, is Yehuda Tato, is the lower level unity. In other words, they both express unity, right? The upper level of unity is a level of unity, as we said earlier, where it doesn't allow the possibility of anything to exist as our mashal, apart from that, as is our mashal of the light of the sun in the sun. The lower level of unity is where that light of the sun, which is in the sun, finds a way of expressing itself in such a way that the unity is present, but in a manner like our raindrop or our ray of light, that the sense of something else can exist. And the Zohar says that the Shema is Yehuda Allah, the first level, and Baruch Shem is the lower level. Ki vo'ed, because the word vo'ed, Baruch Shem Malchuso La'elam vo'ed, hu echad, is the same word as echad, bechalufi asvan. This is a principle in Kabbalah that letters of who have certain commonalities can be substituted for each other. And so there's a substitution, but the essential meaning of the original thing doesn't change. In other words, here we have unity and unity, two unities, upper level unity, lower level unities. And it's done by the substitution of letters. So echad, the letters in echad, aleph and the ches, and the ayin in vo'ed, are all from the same guttural motzi hapeh, the aspect of the mouth which these letters reveal. In our manner of speaking, we don't pronounce aleph and ayin in a guttural manner, but in the Sephardic tradition, in the Yemenite tradition, they do. These letters are both originating in the same source in the 5 motzos hapeh, the aleph, the ayin, and the ches, and then the dalet is the dalet. So these words echad and voed are really the same through the rule of transformation of letters. They both express unity, but different kinds of unity. Now, what is it? The upper level of unity is Hashem Echad. The lower level of unity, and the cause of the lower level, which is the contraction, the tzimtzum, and the reason for that tzimtzum, and this concealment, the reason for the tzimtzum and the concealment, that Hashem conceals, Hashem, the Holy One, blessed be He, conceals the life force of the world. The reason for that is is so that the world appears to be something on its own. So hine yadu, it's known l'chol, it's known to everybody, and I guess now to us, ki tachlis b'ris ha'olam, that the whole purpose, the end game of the creation of the world, why Hashem created the world. If you can ascribe a why, I mean Hashem did. The Kabbalah tells us that Hashem ascribed a why to the world. He rose up in his mind to create, what was the reason for? To create a dwelling place for himself in the lower world, whatever that means. I mean, we'll speak about that more. That's a line from the Midrash Tanhuma, that Hashem created the world in order to have a dwelling place in this lower world. Because the whole purpose of the existence of the world, of the creation of the world, Hu bishvil his galus malchusa yisbara, is for the revelation of his malchus. The ein melech b'loyan, because there can, if he wants to be king, and he does. In fact, we learn in Hasidus that his desire to be king is rooted way, way deep in the essence of his essence, close to the essence of his essence. If he wants to be king, so there's no king bli am, without a people. So he wants to be king. And he wants to be king, he has to have a kingdom. So he creates the creation. Pirish, am. Now what does am mean? This is a Kabbalistic and again, particularly Hasidic interpretation of the word am, which is people. Am, if you look inside, if you have to see the Hebrew to see this, I'll try to explain this. Ki am miloshet emamus. The word emamus has the same aleph, ayin, and mem that am has. Now, what are emamus? Emamus are dark charcoal coals. Like imagine, I don't know, people don't use barbecue with coals much anymore. Maybe they do. Maybe they do. But you can imagine it, even if you haven't seen it. A bed of coals, which had been lit. And initially, if you used a fuel, like gasoline or whatever, it flames up. But then the coals catch. And then the coals turn from the flame dies out. And the coals turn gray. And they appear to be just gray, sort of soft stones. But of course, you can't touch them because that's the hottest that they get. And that's the time when you start cooking. So, here's the point, what's we're the we look like something separate, but we're hot. We're hot entities, have been discharged to cook things up so that God himself can be revealed down here below. So we're the we're the imamus. Shehem, which these amamas, these coals, as I said, they look like gray, separate things, devorim nefradim, separate things, vizarim, and strange, meaning separate from, v'rechaikim, and far away, ma'maylas amela. So now we're back into the analog here. The creation, with all of its infinity, but focusing now on its particularity and individuality, everything, uncountable myriads of individual things, is very far in appearance from the unity of Hashem Echad, which is pervading everything. So it's very, very far. So just like the people in the kingdom are very far from the level of the king. And by definition, the king has to be over them and at a level above them. And so the creation, the coals, the creation, is very far from the milas of the melech, from the level of the king. Because even if the king has children, Rabbi, many children, Oed, many, very much, you would never speak about a king being king over his children. So even though there's a certain sense of separation, and this is sometimes related to the world of Atzilus, where there is a world of separation, right? But at the same time, there's a constant sense that I have a relationship of love and unity with my parent, right? So no matter how many children the king has, that's not going to be the same as having subjects and as having a kingdom. And likewise, Afilo al Sadim Levadim, and you could and go the other, even another, all of the officers and agents of the king also are not in the same way members of the kingdom as the common people are. There's a pasuk in Mishlei that says it's specifically with a lot of with a lot of people, with a lot of coals, amamois, that experience themselves as being separate, that they are, if you see the beauty of the king. And the name of God, of godliness, the name of godliness, which shows on God's malchus, his kingship, his blessed kingship, whose Shem Adnos, his name Adnai, Adnos, shows on regency, sovereignty. He is the sovereign of all the earth. The Nimsa, so it comes out, and this is the harking back to where we started about the notion of the singularity and unity of the two apparently opposite midos of Chesed and Gevurah. So it comes out, Ki midazu, this attribute, which creates things that experience themselves as really separate and on a different level than Hashem. The Shem Zeh, and this name, Adnai, or Adnos, this name, Adnos, which shows on Tzimtzum, separation, is the midah through which everything that has a separate existence is in existence, and that's the world. The world, again, Miloshin Helam, Ayin Lamed Mem. Li'ez Oilam Kamei Shehu, that it should be a world as it is. Akshav, now. And what do you mean, what the world as it is now? A world which is a Yesh Goima, which is completely a substantial, individuated, myriad set of infinite, individuated objects, suns, moon, planets, galaxies, and then worlds of Asiya, Yetzira, of Bria, of spiritual realms as well. And everything should experience itself as a something, the Davar Nifrad, and something separate, Bifnei Atzmai, and something on its own. But the purpose of that separation is so that it shouldn't become batal b'metzias, that it shouldn't become absorbed like the light of the sun in the sun. Ki behistalkus midazu, because if this midah of adnos, which here is equated to the midah of Gevurah and Simson, if this midah were to depart, and this name, Adnos, Adnoi, the world would return to its source, B'davar Hashem, in the speech, the word of Hashem, V'ruach Piv Yisborach, and in the breath of his mouth, U'batal Sham B'metzias, and all of this myriad of creation would become nullified in its existence, Mamish, V'lehoya Shem Oilam Olav Klal, and the name world would not have any meaning whatsoever. That's today's time. You guys can't see what I'm doing with my hand, but you know what I'm doing. I'm scrolling here to see who's around. So there's a lot of people around. Comments, questions? Straightforward, huh? No problem. We live in paradox, separate and always one with him. So, ubechen, therefore what? How will our day be different?
Sorry, it's not so simple. Simple?
Oh, you really? Oh,
it's so simple. We wake
it
up
isn't
here.
so simple, huh? Were you here though were you here for all the simplicity?
Most of it, some of it. I had other things going on.
You're right. It's not so simple, right? As he said to us, it's not in the ability of any person to really understand this.
Right. But except what we were talking about yesterday, that was the issue from yesterday, also about paradox and the unity and the disunity and the appearances and the realities. Yeah. And that's the purpose, to make the unity out of the disparity.
Yeah, to reveal the unity, that's hidden in the disparity or in the,
Because otherwise, what's the big deal?
Right, but the big deal is that you're right. You have to know that that's the case, because you could think, as many have thought, as we said, that the world is something that Hashem. First of all, many people don't even have the notion that there's an Hashem. But assuming that you do, you could have the notion, as you said 2 days ago, I think, that Hashem started up the world and it's just hanging in there and going on its own like a infinitely wound up clock. But that would lead you to not be on the path of emes, because it would lead you to a place where, okay, fine, here it is, and this is it, and that's all there is. And even if it goes on forever, this is all there is. But the yichud, shahar yichud, and the knowledge of yichud tells us no. Yes, these are separate things which are going on forever. But you know why they're going on forever? Because Hashem is intimately present in everything, bringing everything into being all the time. And our job is to reveal that within ourselves and in the world. And that's a big thing to know. Even though we can't understand it necessarily, but just to know it. Hayinka. You're there.
You know, I was listening to a podcast and it was asking, and the question that he asked was, if you take a picture, it comes out different than what you see. So what is real? What the camera shows or what you see in your mind? And according to Tanya, really none of it is.
I would say the opposite. According to Tanya, all of it is.
Yeah, I guess that's another way of looking at it.
It's the same thing, right?
Right, it really is the same thing.
Right. Because the none of it is because ain od milvado. The none of it means this camera image and this physical reality of which this is an image are really nothing, because there's only him. But on the other hand, and this is where the Hiddush comes. See, the Hiddush is really this, or the Hiddush is this scholarless. It's nothing and something at the same time, right? It's yesh me'ayin, which could imply it's a thing which dropped out of the ayin, but that would be a mistake to understand yesh me'ayin, something from nothing. You know, like I take a ball in my hand and I throw it over there. That over there is the yesh, and the ayin, I walked away. You know, yesh me'ayin really means yesh and ayin at the same time, in a sense of unity in which the yesh is concealing and could only exist because of the concealment of the ayin.
Right.
Yeah.
It's deep.
It's deep. And we are deep. And the whole creation is deep, but we're the deepest part. Because we not only can have emunah, right? We just spoke about the yichud, and we can grasp this with our emunah, And with that, we become effective agents for God's plan, unlike anything else in creation. You know, the angels are not the agents of God's plan. They're tools that he uses. We're the agents of the plan, which was, I think Rivka or somebody said it earlier, which is to expose the godliness, reveal the godliness in the separateness, which is one way, simple way of defining what Geula is. Geula is the revelation in daily life and in worldly organization, global organization of the godliness in everything. Viva. Yeah.
So right before Baruch She'amar, when we say L'Shem Yuchad Kutsha Brichu. Right. So it's, after this discussion, this long discussion, meaning not just today.
Right.
So when you say it, I mean, everything that the Alter Rebbe put into a siddur clearly is, basic. But it seems like this pasuk, which is small and seems to be like inserted, whatever, but it's the basis of our existence, it seems.
You're absolutely right.
This discussion.
You are absolutely right. And I'm going to tell you, even go further, just the first, Hashem Yichud Kudsha Brichu, before you get to Shchinte. The unit, Kudsha, I've mentioned this before. Kudsha is the word Kaddish, right?
Yeah.
Kaddish, we translate holy, but it means the transcendent light. That which Hashem is Kaddish Umuvdal, so-called separate, which the Alter Rebbe in the beginning of Tanya tells us more than once, that do not touch separate as not here, but separate meaning as a level which is not exposed, and which is everywhere present. This is the definition of Or HaSoiver, hidden but everywhere present. And that hiddenness and presentness is meant to be borach, is meant to be drawn down, right? Brucha Lashon Berach, which is the knee, which is to bring everything down, which is a very, in itself, Kodesh Boruchu is an encapsulation of bringing down and revealing the level of Kedusha, the level of allness, which is concealed in the particular. So, and then you have Shchinte. And Shchinte is the operative manifest, is the operating, operating sphere, in which Shechina is Malchus, Shechina is kingdom. Shechina is the way that he does it. He encapsulates, he manifests hiddenness and openness, godliness, allness and contraction at the same time. Where does he do that? In the sphere of Malchus, which is the kingdom, and that is the definition of his kingdom. His kingdom is the place in which all things are concurrently, simultaneously experiencing a separation from and a connection with. And that experience is only and comes only through avoida. Avoida, the poil mamish. The poil mamish, we have the ability to, whilst we're separate, and while we're the Am of today's chapter, we're the separate members of the kingdom. Whilst we're separate, through avoida, we cultivate the presence of God and the allness of God within us at one and the same time. Hashem Yichud, to create meaning to create a unity, a reality, a drawing down of Kutchabrichu and his Shechina and his kingdom. So you're right. It's, almost, if you dive in this way, which this is what you're talking about, take the words, I'll finish with this little rant with this, that in Kuntres Tefillah, from the Rebbe Rashab, one of the things he advocates is to just, if you can't, nobody knows all the mystical Kabbalah intentions when we speak about Kavana in davening. It's not about that. It's just, he says that at least take some piece of it every time you daven, one line of it, right? The line that comes to my mind that seems every day is Poiseach es yodecha, Ashrei, in Ashrei. Open up your hands. Chassidus tells us that yodecha also means your yud, yodecha, your yud. Open up your yud. Take that little point of singularity, take that little point of separateness, which one point is separate from another, and open it up so that we see the unity within it. And just take L'Shem Yichud K'Chibrichu, or any line or lines, and just look at them through the eyes of Chassidus, and a world opens up in davening.
Thank you.
Beautiful. Yeah. That's what? Go ahead.
That sounds like the B'chain for today.
That's what I was just going to say. That sounds like a good B'chain. Shkoya. All right. If there's nothing hanging at the moment, then we'll see you tomorrow.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Avi.
Bye-bye.